Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. Hopefully you're having a great day. You're entering the Cal Zone, and today I'm going to discuss the updates surrounding Eurovision 2026, and my goodness, do we certainly have some updates. In my last video discussing whether or not Israel was going to get banned from Eurovision and my whole take on the whole situation, I brought up that the EBU General Assembly was going to take place on December 4th, and it was then when we were going to find out Israel's fate. Well, December 4th has long since passed, so what happened? Like last time, I'll go through the news in chronological order, starting from that day and then continuing on. Sorry that this video is so late. I did purposely wait until after the official list of participating countries was released, but I've also been busy, and unlike a lot of the people in the Eurovision fandom, especially on the other side, I actually have a full-time job that takes up a lot of time, so yeah. Anyways, just a little refresher if you're not aware of the lead up to this whole situation. 5 countries, Spain, Ireland, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Iceland, all came out and said that they were going to boycott Eurovision 2026 if Israel is allowed to compete. I want to start with this report that Spain would have been willing to participate if Israel competed under a neutral flag. I already discussed in the last video why this is dumb, but everyone will know that the neutral flag is the Israeli entry, so the people who want Israel in the contest won't be happy because of discrimination, anti-Semitism, double standards, whatever. And the people who want Israel banned won't be happy either because there will still be an Israeli artist on stage, which they don't want, so it's a stupid idea. And to the people saying, oh no, we don't have a problem with Jews and or Israelis as long as they're not representing Israel, to that I say, do you remember the way that Tali was treated in 2024? Because I do. Seeing the vile and disgusting reactions to Tali, who is Jewish and born in Israel, winning the Luxembourg Song Contest in 2024 was one of the main catalysts that opened my eyes and made me speak up, especially about anti-Semitism in this community. I urge you to go read the comments and quote tweets on this post. I'm going to put some of the worst ones on screen, and I'll put a link to the post so you can see what I'm talking about. A lot of this is just straight up anti-Semitism. There's no defending it, period, end of discussion. So no, y'all do have a problem with Israelis regardless of what country they're representing, and some of y'all have a problem with Jews in general. So what happened during the General Assembly? Every EBU member was asked to approve the new rules package that had been proposed in November, which included bringing back juries to the semifinals, dropping the maximum number of votes per payment method from 20 to 10. Juries will now include young jurors, ages 18 to 25, which is something that's been long overdue, a limit on government promotion, and that's definitely directed at Israel, and honestly, fair enough. Let's get any outside political influence and interference out of the contest. And lastly, to implement more safeguards to ensure voting is fair. If you voted yes on this, you are also voting in favor of Israel participating, and if you voted no, it would then force a vote on Israel's participation directly. Now, to be honest, I don't like the way that this was set up, and it would have been easier and probably better to just vote on Israel's participation directly, but based on how this went, I think that vote very likely would have gone in Israel's favor anyway. It was reported by Eurovision Fun that Turkey, Slovenia, Spain, and Belgium were heavily critical of Israel, and just a question, why is Turkey allowed to vote on Eurovision-related things when they haven't competed since 2012? It seems really dumb, almost dumber than the collective IQ of the Euromelons on Twitter. The biggest surprise, though, was that Ukraine was heavily in favor of Israel, saying that it is not appropriate to compare the case of Russia to that of Israel. A lot of people were upset about that and were shocked, but Ukraine happens to be 100% correct. And keep in mind, RTVE, that's the Spanish broadcaster, proposed a regulation to remove countries in war from the contest the day before. So if Israel was removed because of that, that would have opened the door to Ukraine's removal as well. And it's very clear that RTVE is just salty that they lost to Ukraine in 2022. And to be fair, very few countries would have been in favor of kicking out Ukraine from the contest, but it sets a really bad precedent, so I'm glad that it was rejected. In the end, the motion was passed with 738 votes in favor, 264 against with wishes to vote on Israel's participation directly, and 120 abstentions. Some of the countries that publicly supported Israel throughout this process were Germany, Austria, France, Greece, Malta, and Cyprus. And here is a definitive list of who voted yes and who voted no. So, voting yes were Albania, Andorra, Austria, Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, France, Germany, Georgia, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Luxembourg, Malta, Moldova, North Macedonia, Norway, Portugal, San Marino, Romania, Slovakia, Sweden, Switzerland, and Ukraine, with Finland, Latvia, and Serbia likely voting yes. The countries that voted no are Algeria, Belgium, Egypt, Iceland, Ireland, Montenegro, Morocco, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Spain, Tunisia, and Turkey. And like, I think it's so funny that half of the countries that voted no are countries that either have never participated or haven't participated in a very long time. Like, why are Algeria and Egypt and Tunisia allowed to vote on Eurovision related things when they have never competed in Eurovision and never will? It's so bizarre to me. Armenia likely voted no, the UK likely abstained, and then the 5 countries that we don't know how they voted are Bosnia, Croatia, Jordan, Lithuania, and Poland. I would assume that Jordan voted no, but maybe not. The other ones, we're just not really sure. After this was announced, the Euromelons had a nuclear level meltdown. They had truly deluded themselves into thinking that this was going to go in their favor, which makes sense given they are extremely delusional. In the aftermath, 4 of the 5 countries, excluding Iceland, who threatened to withdraw, did so pretty much immediately. So I do have to give them some credit for sticking to their principles, even if I disagree with them vehemently and think they're really stupid. A couple of the countries released statements. I'll put this infographic essentially summarizing why these countries are withdrawing. You can go find the full statements from like Avrotros, for example, if you want to, but I just don't really know that it's worth putting on screen here. After the vote, there were a few other countries that had question marks on if they were actually going to compete, but shortly afterwards, Portugal confirmed their participation. However, the Euromelons are convinced that Portugal will be forced to withdraw because pretty much everyone competing in Festival da Canção this year has pledged not to go to Eurovision if they win. So I'm assuming that Portugal is going to have to end up internally selecting, if I had to guess. Maybe they'll withdraw, especially because the timeline is kind of awkward. Festival da Canção is usually the last national final of the year, so I would have to guess that if they actually are going to compete, which I think they will, that they'll have to have some sort of backup entry ready to go just in case. Maybe they'll withdraw, but I really doubt it, since there is a pretty hefty fine associated with withdrawing after you've confirmed participation and after the deadline, which we've passed. So I believe Portugal will find an entry some way, somehow. Maybe it won't be good, but they probably will compete. Finland confirmed their participation as well on the 4th. Belgium, despite being a country that has been ardently against Israel during this process, confirmed their participation on the 5th. And keep in mind, this is the Walloon broadcaster, which has been a lot more neutral on the issue. If it was the Flemish broadcaster, which was the broadcaster last year, it seems very likely that they would have withdrawn as well. On December 10th, Poland confirmed their participation. There were actually some question marks about that, but they are competing as normal. And Iceland confirmed their intentions to withdraw, which was not a surprise. December 11th, Martin Green, who's the new ESC director, and who's probably already more hated than Martin Oosterdahl ever was, put out a statement. I'm not going to read it, but I will put it on screen if you really want to read it yourself. You can pause the video. I don't really think there's anything in here that's super important, honestly. December 11th as well, Nemo announces that they are returning their trophy to the EBU in protest. Again, I'll put the statement on screen here. But like I pointed out in this tweet, it's giving performative activism. What has changed from 2024 and 2025 when Nemo gladly competed and was an interval act with a really bizarre song? I still find this interval act extremely entertaining to watch because it was so ridiculous. But what has changed from 2024 and 2025 to now? It screams, give me attention because my career is failing. December 15th, the official list of participating countries was released with 35 nations taking part. So no surprise debut from like Canada, which was somewhat speculated, and I honestly would have loved to see Canada in the contest because that means that I could have maybe found a way to compete in Eurovision. I promised that if Canada was going to compete, that I was going to find a way to compete in the Canadian pre-selection process, because you may not know this, but I do have Canadian citizenship, but no debut from Canada, unfortunately. And also no debut from Kazakhstan, which that's just never going to happen. If the EBU wanted Kazakhstan in the contest, it would have happened already. December 16th, and this is the last thing I'm going to show before I get into my opinions on this whole situation, ORF announced that Palestinian flags will be allowed and the crowd will not be muted, unlike last year, which I actually support. Muting the crowd last year gave the impression that the contest was biased in favor of Israel, and it will be very interesting to see the people who say they're going to boycott show up with Palestinian flags anyway, because Eurovision is their entire personality. In my opinion, the EBU did the right thing. Could they have made it easier by letting all members vote directly on Israel's participation? Yeah, that probably would have been better, and it would have stemmed some of the controversy that arose from the whole situation, but what they did was better than nothing. The new rules are a positive step in the right direction. I know that's an unpopular take because fuck the EBU is very popular right now, but I really couldn't care less, honestly. As I explained in my last video, Khan has not violated any rules. I know some of the broadcasters, especially the countries that are withdrawing, have tried to say that they have, but I have yet to see any concrete evidence that Khan has violated rules. Show me the rules they violated. I don't think they exist, personally. But especially now that a ceasefire is technically in effect, I know there's been violations, but still, I see no reason why Khan can't compete. Why should they, as an independent broadcaster, be punished for the actions of Netanyahu's government when they haven't done anything wrong? They shouldn't be, and you can't change my mind on that. The people who argue against Khan and say that Israel should be banned when not bringing up the genocide blood libel say they violated rules. And again, find me a rule that Khan has violated, provide me irrefutable evidence of it, and I will call it out. You can't, because it doesn't exist. In the aftermath of the decision, the president of RTVE shared this cartoon, and this is part of the larger issue with anti-Semitism in the Eurovision sphere. Look, criticism of Israel is one thing, it's totally valid and acceptable. I have some criticisms of Israel and the Israeli government myself. I know the perception of me on Twitter by the Melons is that I'm some hardline, racist, Zionist bigot that's totally closed-minded, but that's really not the case. Yes, I am a Zionist, and I'm unapologetic about that. And a lot of y'all seem to have an issue with what Zionism actually means because the only sources you use to learn about the world are TikTok, which is a cesspool for misinformation, and Wikipedia, which has been hijacked by bad faith actors over the last few years. Zionism is just the belief that Jews have a right to self-determination in their ancient homeland, which is the land of Israel. That's it. It's that simple. If you have a problem with that, I would then ask you, why is it okay for the Arabs to have something like 20 countries and Muslims to have over 50 countries where they're the majority, most of which came from Arab colonization, by the way. But the Jews can't have one tiny state the size of New Jersey without people calling them invaders and colonizers in their own homeland. Get the fuck out of here. It's ridiculous. So yes, I am a Zionist, but I'm not some radical, crazy extremist, and I'm actually going to give you a few of my criticisms of Israel. First off, Netanyahu, he's a criminal, man. He needs to be held accountable for the things he's done in office, not limited to the war crimes that have been committed during the war. And yes, there have been war crimes. I do defend the premise of the war in Gaza because no country could allow a terrorist attack like what happened on October 7th, with the terrorists then promising to do that again and again and again and not respond extremely harshly. Here's a hypothetical situation just to jog your brain. Imagine one of the cartels in Mexico poured over the southern border into a small border town like Nogales, Arizona, and then proceeded to slaughter thousands of Americans indiscriminately, and then dragged hundreds more, including children, back over the border into Mexico as hostages, and then promised that they were going to do that again, repeatedly, until the United States is destroyed. What do you think the response from the American government would be? Here's a hint from the president himself.
I'm gonna bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care. They've got to be stopped.
So yes, I fully defend the premise of the war. What happened on October 7th and the subsequent threats from Hamas to do more terrorist attacks in the wake of it serve as an existential threat to Israel, and they have a duty to protect their citizens. I also completely reject the idea that a genocide is happening, because if there was, why are there only like 70,000 deaths, with a good chunk of those being Hamas militants, and why is the civilian to combatant death ratio the lowest in modern military history? If there was really a genocide, you'd think there'd be at least 500,000 dead Gazans or more by now, right? Israel is so much more technologically advanced than the Palestinians, so if Israel really wanted to commit genocide, almost every single Palestinian would be dead by now, and yet the Palestinian population is still growing. It's the only genocide in history where the population has increased since it started. I mean, compare it to what's happening in Sudan, and there's no comparison at all. However, to claim that the war has been executed perfectly and that there haven't been war crimes and crimes against humanity is disingenuous, in my opinion. I don't buy into the idea that the IDF is perfect and has never done anything wrong ever. Obviously, I understand this war is and was probably the most challenging war that any country has ever had to fight, because they're fighting a group that embeds themselves within civilian areas with the intention of killing as many of their civilians as possible to make Israel look bad. I made a full-length video on the entire war and my thoughts on it, so I'll leave that linked if you're interested, because I don't want this video to be forever, but I could rant for a long time about how stupid people are for falling for the most obvious propaganda ever. But back to my criticisms of Israel. Netanyahu is maybe the worst prime minister in Israeli history. No one else has done more to tank Israel's reputation abroad than him, and that will cause negative downstream effects for generations. I also don't like the policy regarding settlers in the West Bank. I do understand the view that the West Bank, which historically is called Judea and Samaria, is ancient Jewish land, but building settlements there is not only not helpful and doing nothing to help the peace process, but is worsening Israel's PR, which is bad enough already, because we see incidents of religious extremists doing terrible things all the time there. And of course, I have to bring up Ben-Gvir, who is maybe the most odious politician I have ever seen. He has said some truly reprehensible things, and it's amazing how this person has maintained a position of power for so long. That is valid criticism of Israel. It's really not that hard. What is not valid criticism of Israel is saying shit like "from the river to the sea," which is borderline genocidal. It really plays on this naive Western belief that somehow Jews could live peacefully as a minority in a Palestinian Muslim state, which is totally laughable if you know anything about history, and especially about how Jews have been treated as minorities, particularly in Arab and Muslim countries. And the truth is that a lot of the people who say this just want Jews gone from the land entirely. What is not criticism of Israel is saying globalize the Intifada, which is a call to murder Jews around the world. I know someone's going to say, oh no, Intifada just means uprising. Oh yeah, what does that look like in practice? The first and second Intifadas were waves of terrorist attacks committed by Palestinians against almost exclusively Israeli civilians. So in practice, if you want to globalize that, it means murdering Jews around the world because they are Jewish. Look at what happened at Bondi Beach in Australia. That is exactly what globalize the Intifada looks like. And valid criticism of Israel is certainly not this. Replacing 4 stars on the EU flag, which, by the way, the EU has nothing to do with Eurovision, so it's a really stupid cartoon. But replacing 4 stars on the EU flag with a bloody Star of David is not criticism of Israel. That is textbook anti-Semitism. And if you can't see that, you are the problem. Why should I even be upset that Spain isn't competing this year when the literal president of the broadcaster is sharing blatantly anti-Semitic cartoons and getting away with it? There was no public apology or anything. He just deleted it silently and moved on like nothing ever happened. That is totally unacceptable. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Spain has been largely awful since 2015, with really only Chanel and Blanca Paloma, who was robbed, serving as bright spots. What am I missing out on with Spain not here? Let's be real, what are we really missing out on with any of the boycotters? Ireland has been awful for almost 15 years. The only good result was Bambi, aka Dr. Bambi all fuck, but other than that, they've been dog shit. Hot take, I believe the Netherlands is the most overrated country in the contest. I don't really like any of their songs. Slovenia has never really been good. They have a few solid entries scattered throughout their history, but in 30 participations, their best result is 7th, which is abysmal. And yeah, losing Iceland is kind of unfortunate. I do enjoy Iceland in the contest, but they're very hit or miss. And so this is why I think this whole notion of Eurovision is dying that the Melons have tried to say is so funny, because most casual viewers are not going to notice a difference from last year. Maybe some people will wonder where Spain is, but considering, again, Spain's been complete dog shit recently, I don't really think a lot of people will care, to be completely honest. And seriously, what is the main difference between losing the boycotters and we're also gaining back Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova? So there really isn't a huge difference between last year and this year. And yes, I do assume that some broadcasters, some of the commentators will talk about how that 5 countries are boycotting, but again, if they don't, there's really no way to know that anything is different this year. So yeah, Eurovision is absolutely not dying. Is Eurovision in a good spot right now? No, I don't think so. I think it'd be ridiculous to say that it is, but to say that the contest is dying is just so disingenuous to me. I could talk about more, particularly regarding very real anti-Semitism in the Eurovision fan community, but I don't want this video to be half an hour long, so I'm going to leave it there, and I do want to discuss the 2 entries that were selected this past weekend, starting with Albania. I was very curious how Albania was going to try and build off the great result they achieved with Zierem, and I think it's pretty safe to say they're going to be successful in that endeavor. I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch FIC at all. I was at work at the time, and I have not done a good job of keeping up with national finals this year, but I do think Albania made a pretty good choice, and I doubt there was anything significantly better in the lineup. Sometimes the translation from the FIC stage to the Eurovision stage is a bit tricky, especially for a song like this, where the orchestra and background singers really add to the atmosphere. Alice has a great voice. It's nice to have a solo male performer from Albania for the first time since 2018, and it went pretty well for them last time, so I think it's going to go well for them again this time. I'm not sure how Albania will stage this. I hope they don't resort to the same red and black stage that they always do, but I feel like they're on a good trajectory right now, and I'm confident this is going to at least qualify, given that juries are back in the semis, and this is a song that the juries will like quite a bit. If Albania nails the staging, I wouldn't completely throw out the possibility of back-to-back top 10 entries for them. Really well done, Albania. I'm excited to see what this looks like in Vienna. Now, the entry that more people have been talking about is Montenegro, Tamara Zivkovic with Nova Zora. First of all, let me give a shout out to Montenegro. Montenegro's national final Monte song was actually really good this year. I hadn't listened to any of the songs before the show, and I had pretty much no expectations at all, because Monte song last year was a shit show, but I was so surprised. Most of the songs were actually really enjoyable. I have 5 songs that I downloaded from Monte song, which, considering it's a 15-song national final and also Montenegro, that's kind of insane. But when I heard and saw Nova Zora, I instantly knew that it was the one. This song is a banger, and in my opinion is easily the best song that Montenegro has ever sent to Eurovision. The outfits were great, Tamara is an excellent performer. I thought her vocals were pretty good for the most part, and the staging and graphics were good as well, especially for a very low budget national final like Monte song. My only gripe is that we could maybe do more with the choreo in the first dance break, but other than that, this is an awesome entry, and especially for a country like Montenegro that has been so bad historically. Assuming that Montenegro sees the potential in this and actually invests in some good staging, this will easily break their long NQ streak. Montenegro hasn't appeared in the final since 2015, and this could end up being one of the fan favorite entries of the year. I'm incredibly optimistic about Eurovision this year if this is how the year is starting. It's about as good of a start as we could hope for to a season. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah. Here's to a safe and prosperous New Year, and until next time, take it easy.